I think this weekend is really a lot about perspective, okay? The Tigers drop a series to the Marlins. It was a disappointing series on the field, but Tarik Skubal got hurt, and reports say he's okay. And I think that is a bigger sigh of relief than anything that really could have happened on the field. So we'll talk about that and more all today on Locked On Tigers.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Monday, September 15th, 2025. Thank you so much for making Locked On Tigers your first listen. Every single day, we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. Welcome in. Welcome all, everybody. Hope you all had a wonderful and fantastic weekend. The Detroit Tigers did not really have a wonderful and fantastic weekend. They dropped 2 of 3 to the Marlins in Miami, and Tarik Skubal left game 1 with an injury. We were all terrified. It was scary, okay? I'll admit it. I crashed out. I completely, I mean, if you follow me on the internet, I mean, you know, I was not pleased. I was not in a good place, we'll say. All right. But joking aside, I was really a legitimately terrifying moment. I think that this is the type of thing where if Skubal legitimately was hurt, and it sounds like he's okay. I want to say that. We'll probably say it, 8 other times throughout this episode. If he was legitimately out for the rest of the season, which is only 2 weeks, or like the postseason, that would probably be a scenario in which the fan base looks around and goes, well, that's like kind of it. He ultimately he's a pitcher, and he is going to play once every few games at most in the postseason. But it's really hard to envision a Tigers team making a deep run in the playoffs without Tarik Skubal on their roster. So that was my first thought. Was I barely even care about the results of the series because Tarik Skubal is okay. The velo plummeted, and you could tell, like, he threw an 84-mile-an-hour meatball up there. At one point, you were like, oh, my goodness. But they ran some tests. They came back negative. We're all good. It sounds like he might even pitch in the regular season. They're not even worried enough to be like, oh, we'll just wait till the postseason. We'll take that. We will gladly take that. Game 1 was obviously that was the big storyline in game 1. I didn't even really care about the score. Game 2, they should have won, and I will complain about that in a second here. Game 3, they did win. So, again, perspective a little bit, I guess. It feels like losing Tarik would have been an insurmountable thing to overcome for this team in October. And so I'm thankful that is not the case, despite the fact that this was, I think, pretty objectively a disappointing series on the field from a pure baseball perspective. I think the other thing about this series, finally moving on from me hyperfixating on Skubal's non-injury, is that the pitching concerns that I have for this team don't really change after this weekend. When you look at the people that struggled and did well, it's like, duh. For lack of a better term, I guess. I guess Morton is the only one that struggled this weekend that you're kind of banking on figuring it out, or hoping, I guess I should say, that he can figure it out come postseason time. Chris Paddock got popped. Okay. That doesn't really change anything about how we navigate the rest of the year or navigate the postseason. Rafael Montero struggled. Okay, doesn't really change a whole lot. Morton is important. That's again, we'll talk plenty about him today too. And then from like an offensive perspective, they could have done way more. I'll pick on a couple of people obviously, but unless this team scores 10 runs a game the rest of the season, or I guess like the opposite, like 0 runs a game every game the rest of the season, I think we kind of know what this offense is at this point. These last 2 weeks are not going to like substantially change my opinion of what this offense could be or is going into playoff baseball. So, disappointing series, but I don't think we really lost or gained a whole heck of a lot either, aside from, a couple of game lead in the division, for whatever that's worth to you. So what went wrong? I guess, like, technically you can point to Tarik Skubal's final line. It was not very good. The injury happened. I'm just hoping that rest and not being hurt kind of fixes that on its own. I don't have too much else to say about it. The velo plummeted, and he wasn't very sharp. Chris Paddock, like I said, like he's a low leverage long reliever at this point. Like, it is what it is. I don't have too much else to say about that either. 3 earned runs, gave up the home run. His ERA is now 5.34. Like, no one's holding their breath hoping that Chris Paddock is going to figure it out in the last 12 games of the season to a point where come October you're like extremely confident in him being on the mound. I think we all kind of know what he is at this point. Rafael Montero, at least there's some nuance to this conversation because he had a great start to his Tigers tenure after being traded to the Detroit Tigers this deadline. But all of those but one were extremely low leverage situations, and he was still walking a ton of people. Like, this was not like a sustainable thing. I saw people, posting his stats or saying that he was like a good find or whatever. It's like, well, I get there's a lot of context you're leaving out with that conversation is all I'm trying to say. He had been good. He had not given up an earned run in quite some time. His ERA has gone down a lot since becoming a Tiger, but it was like 5.5 when they acquired him, and now it's in the high 4s. Like, it's not like it's anything crazy or he's gone on like a why can't I remember our closer's name? Kyle Finnegan. Goodness gravy. It's not like he was pitching like him. So like he pitched twice this weekend. He did not do very well in either game. I don't think even with the stats he was putting up that anybody in the fan base was like, yeah, Rafael Montero is a high leverage reliever and is one of the best relievers on this team. He is what he is. He's going to have crazy command, but get some strikeouts. Charlie Morton, 4 innings, 3 hits, 2 earned runs, 4 walks, 4 strikeouts. That is now a 5.56 ERA on the season. This is now a few outings in a row with just horrible command. Like, legitimately terrible command of all of his pitches. Everybody has, at times his, changeup is hanging today, or, his slider isn't a good pitch today. We'll talk about Cater Montero later. He's like the CEO of that, right? Like, it's if he's locating the slider, he's great. If he's not, he gives up home runs. Morton, it's been all of his pitches for, I think, maybe it's 3 of the last 4 outings, but it's certainly his last 2. He has had just brutal command. 4 walks in 4 innings. So yeah, like now it's so funny how quickly these things change over the course of a season. A month ago in the middle of August, when we were talking about what the postseason rotation could look like, it was Skubal, and then a lot of people, myself included, had Morton as the number 2, and not because he's, some excellent, all-star caliber pitcher these days, but just from the sheer fact that he could get swing and miss semi-consistently, and nobody else in the rotation was really doing that at that point. Now, think he's pretty comfortably at the bottom of the totem pole between Skubal, Flaherty, Mize, and Morton. To the point where, I mean, you almost even consider, okay, in the DS, in the divisional series, you go Skubal, you go Flaherty, then you go Mize, and then you hope that you either end the series or you have enough off days mixed in there where you can just potentially go Skubal again for game 4 and not even have Morton be a starter in the divisional round. If you make the CS, then you probably have to reconsider that, and you probably won't be able to throw, Skubal 3 times in a potentially 7-game series. But like, I don't know. I think that there's a lot that has to be ironed out with this pitching staff still, and we have 12 games left. So we'll see. That's every starter getting, depending on who you are, 2 or 3 more starts here before October baseball to kind of earn the spot. And even, Flaherty and Mize, we're talking about 2 good outings from those guys in their last 2 starts. If they completely blow up here down the stretch, then we're back where we were in August, where it's just Skubal and who knows what. Okay, let's talk about what went wrong offensively, and we'll talk about what went right. There actually was quite a few positives from this weekend as well, and then we'll talk stuff, okay? We'll do all of that right after this. First, I'm going to talk to you all about our friends over at FanDuel. The NFL season is here. FanDuel is making sure you are ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however I like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It's quick, it's easy, and it's the best way to add a little more energy to Sundays. So, are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Also got to talk to y'all about our friends over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is so much fun. The daily fantasy app where making the right call can actually pay off. You and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right means cashing in. With football back, Prize Picks is the simplest way to get in on the action. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you can turn your takes into real prizes, all in less than 60 seconds. Such a fun way to stay locked in for the season. Genuinely just more or less on a couple different stats. Dak Prescott, passing yards. Lamar Jackson, more or less passing yards. Travis Kelce, more or less batted balls that turn into interceptions. If you picked more, rather, you would have absolutely had a pretty good day on Prize Picks on Sunday. So download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 in lineups after your first play of a $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONMLB for $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. Welcome back here. Segment 2 of Locked On Tigers. I appreciate you all so much for tuning in as always, making us your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. And we will, of course, be back tomorrow with an off-day episode as we kind of start laying the groundwork here for the last 2 weeks of the regular season. Today, though, we talk about this series loss to the Miami Marlins this weekend. So offensively, we talked a lot about pitching. We haven't mentioned a lick about the offense yet. 8 runs through 3 games against the Marlins, and not like they're high-end pitchers. I guess you can, I don't know, to each their own on whether you include Alcantara, a prime, like, high-end pitcher in 2025 still. But either way, like, they should have done way more damage, and especially when half of those 8 runs came in one game. They put up 2 in game 1 and 3. So it's kind of a weird weekend for offense. I don't think the at-bats were particularly terrible or awful. Like, if you want individuals, I guess Gleyber had an okay weekend. But for me, the conversation with Gleyber is a little bit more zoom out. It's a little bit more macro even. The numbers have just fallen off so noticeably in the second half. And part of that is the zero power at all, right? OPS inherently is going to have slugging mixed in there, and he has next to no slug at this point in his career. But he has value and stuff that goes beyond the box score and goes beyond, numbers, right? He draws walks. That, I guess, does play into numbers, but he doesn't strike out a lot. And he makes pitchers throw a lot of pitches, which is why I think AJ loves him at the top of the lineup card, really, no matter what he is producing as of late. He is going to make sure that the pitcher is working hard to get him out, and you're going to see potentially every pitch that a guy has to offer by the third batter of the ball game. And I think that does matter, even though, again, the results have taken a pretty considerable, I'm not sure, his OPS is in the 750s now. It's one of the not like lower on the team, but there's a handful of guys. There's plenty of guys on the team with better numbers than him overall in that specific area on the season. So it's just an interesting conversation with him because he does have value, and I love him at the top of this lineup. It's just the results have not been there as of late, and I think this weekend you kind of saw the epitome of that. And yeah, over the course of 3 games, like Kerry Carpenter, I thought had a really bad final game in terms of at-bats, but in the first 2 games, I thought they were really good. Like Torkelson had a pretty solid weekend, so I guess he doesn't really fall in there. Riley Green had a couple of really brutal at-bats, but also had a home run and also had a couple of nice at-bats and his working counts a lot more as well this weekend. So I think really the overarching theme of the weekend in offense was everyone had their moments, both positive and negative. They went 3 for 16 with runners in scoring position. That's obviously a bad weekend. Saturday, the team had 14 total base runners and 4 runs scored. And we haven't even talked about the extra innings game on Saturday. There's no reason, well, I guess I did just talk about it, but there's no reason they shouldn't have won that baseball game. And I guess looping this back to the pitching and to the bullpen, this is what happens when you have a really thin pen, right? This is why the fan base wanted more high leverage relievers at the trade deadline. Because in that game, Melton, Canely, and Vest all threw already. Finnegan's obviously hurt. So now you go into extras, and who is left? I saw people when Montero came into the game, they were like, oh my goodness, why are they bringing in Montero? Who else are you going to bring in, big dog? Who's left? And Montero, again, as we talked about earlier, has had pretty decent numbers in terms of preventing runs since joining the Tigers and has pitched in extra innings before. He's gotten a save in extras in a Tigers uniform. So, that's just the bed you make, and you had to lie in it on Saturday. So, as a whole, for things that went wrong, the offense was really a big hit or two the whole weekend away from much better results. I don't think that any of these games, they just took completely terrible at-bats. It's just that is, again, the kind of offensive structure they have, where it feels like a jack of all trades, master of none situation, where they don't really have a overpowering, overwhelming, wow, this guy is going to carry you every single night, but they do have 8 or 9 guys every single night that are going to give you league average or better at bats. And that's going to lead to some stretches and some series where they play like league average, like all of them line up and play, like average or slightly below league average hitters. We've talked about that a lot this year. And the pitching downfalls, as I mentioned at the top of the show, were kind of guys that we were already concerned about. So I think as a whole, it was a disappointing weekend, but I also don't think it changes a whole lot in terms of my perspective of this team. If they win on Saturday in extras instead of losing on Saturday in extras, Is your viewpoint of the Detroit Tigers significantly different on September 15th? We played 140 of these games, man. We have not played. We have watched the Tigers play 140 of these games. Montero recording 2 more outs instead of giving up, hardline drives and losing that game in the 11th inning on Saturday is not going to change too terribly much from my perspective of what I think this team is. That's all. Let's talk about what went right, because there's a handful of stuff that did still go right this weekend. We will do that right after this. Got to talk to y'all about our friends over at Nutrafol. You've probably seen a million ads for hair growth products and thought, sure, like that actually works. There are so many products out there. It's hard to even know which ones are actually going to do anything. And that's why you should give Nutrafol a closer look. It's the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement brand, trusted by over 1.5 million people. And it's not just hype either. This is the supplement clinically tested that targets the root causes of thinning and shedding with a proactive approach. There's so many great features. You can see thicker, stronger, and less shedding hair in 3 to 6 months with Nutrafol. For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering Locked On MLB listeners $10 off of your first month subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com and enter promo code LOCKEDONMLB. That's Nutrafol.com, promo code LOCKEDONMLB. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Third and final segment of Locked On Tigers. Appreciate you all for tuning in. As always, let's talk about what went right this weekend. Kader Montero, I thought was fantastic. 5 innings, 3 hits, no earned runs, no walks, 5 strikeouts. Really impressive. He won't be a big game starter, obviously, this season. He won't be a playoff starter this season. But if he can be an effective multi-inning reliever, he can absolutely carve out a spot for himself on this playoff roster and provide value in the last 2 weeks here of the regular season. They still got games to win as well. I thought his breaking ball was great. We talked about it earlier. He's a guy that has a lot of movement on his slider. It's just he hangs it so often. But when he's not doing that, he looks like this. And he has a pretty darn solid ceiling above him, I guess. That analogy got away from me. Jose Urquidy, Tiger debut this weekend. 1 1/3 innings, 2 hits, no earned runs, 1 walk, 2 strikeouts. I thought the fastball was surprisingly sharp. A lot of light. A lot of life on that pitch in this one. I thought the curveball was solid as well. He hung it a couple of times, almost gave up a home run, warning track shot, but ultimately got the job done. He's another one that if you can make him an effective multi-inning reliever, then that's going to have a lot of value here down the stretch, for the rest of the time that the Tigers are playing baseball, whenever that is. Bullpen, mentioned a couple of guys that struggled. Tommy Kahnle had a nice bounce back weekend, had a couple of shutout outings. Will Vest got back on his feet as well. Both of them pitched twice, and they were both solid in their outings. And then Troy Melton, 3 innings, 2 hits, 1 earned run, no walks, 1 strikeout, the 1 home run, obviously, against. His ERA is now 2.54. This is going to shock you. This is another guy that could be a really solid multi-inning reliever for the Tigers down the stretch in the postseason. The difference with him is that I'm sure we will have conversations about the potential of him being a starter in October as well, which the other two, there will not be any consideration for that. I don't think the team will actually consider Melton as a starter in the postseason either, but I'm sure we'll talk about it here at least at a minimum. Offensively, Torkelson had some really good at-bats. I really liked his ABs. He had a couple of nice line drive singles. I feel like it's been a while since we've seen that out of him, and then had walks galore. I think he had 4, maybe even 5, at least 4 total walks in the series. So, really nice weekend for him as well. Parker Meadows back in the leadoff spot after hitting well in his first week or so back to the majors. Not an incredible weekend, but did have 3 hits in 3 games, which we will take. This lineup just looks considerably different with him clicking at the top of it, right? You have speed on the base paths. He can draw walks. He also has some power in there. Like him as a table setter, if you can get him on base for those tough Glaber at bats and then, the heart of the lineup, it's just a completely different vibe than like the platoon merry-go-round at the top that they've been using for a majority of the year. Only other person I want to point out really is Dylan Dingler. Continues to shine, I think. We might legitimately be talking about him as the most valuable position player on the team this season. We might be talking about him as, a borderline top 5 catcher in the sport, one of the top 3 in the American League. Like it is hard to really articulate how phenomenal he has been for the Tigers this year, and continues this weekend. Had a couple of RBI, had a couple of really nice hits with men on base this weekend. So, okay, in terms of stuff, there's no game to preview. Off day on Monday as you listen to this. But the biggest thing, we're going to say it again, okay? Huge sigh of relief. Close your eyes. Unless you're driving, then don't. Deep breath in, deep breath out. Tarik Skubal is okay and healthy. All tests were negative and will likely even make his next start. Thank goodness. Thank goodness. In terms of roster moves, Sawyer Gipson-Long to the injured list with neck stiffness. Jose Urquidy, that is his roster spot. Also had to add Urquidy to the 40-man roster. And to do that, Bo Brisky was placed on the 60-day IL in order to, again, make the a spot open on the 40-man roster there. Because when you're on the 60, you're obviously not on the 40-man roster. And I'm excited for Urquidy and what he could do. Really disappointing year from Bo Brisky. And obviously the injury is not like a disappointment in terms of like it being his fault. But just a guy who was literally the Tigers' closer in the wild card round. Like was getting the final outs against the Astros in the first round of the postseason a year ago. Was arguably our best reliever in the last like 6 weeks of the season. This year, got rocked early, got demoted to AAA, did not improve a whole lot, and then got hurt. So just an unbelievably disappointing 2025, and hopefully he can get healthy and bounce back in 2026. Thanks for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day, and we will, of course, be back tomorrow. We got a ton to talk about tomorrow, honestly. In terms of, it might just be an episode called Stuff. There's just like a billion different small things that happened over the weekend or that are going to happen over the next 2 weeks that I want to address and bring up. So that'll be tomorrow's show. All right. Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope. I'll catch y'all then, baby. Go Tigers.